Mall in London, Britain's chief rabbi has said Jewish communities won't be intimidated as 100,000 marched in protest against a surge of anti-Semitism triggered by the Middle East crisis. The peaceful demonstration marks the biggest stand against anti-Jewish hate since 1936, when Londoners confronted Oswald Mosley's black shirts at Cable Street. A string of celebrities led the march, including actors Eddie Marsan, Tracy Ann Oberman, Dame Maureen Lipman and Countdown presenter Rachel Riley. Among those taking part was talkTV's Vanessa Feltz, who emotionally summed up the spirit of the demonstration.
That's all it's saying, just peace. This march is all about peace and just treating human beings as human beings. That's all it is.
Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson was seen chatting to crowds with his wife Carrie and 5-month-old son Frankie. Vanessa asked him why he was showing his support. So, I was there with everyone else showing my support. Obviously, I've been to the Palestinian peaceful protest marches. This felt very different. With the Palestinian marches, it felt, I didn't feel in danger there, but the vibe, and it was more of like almost a festival kind of atmosphere. This felt like solemn. It felt like prayer. It was emotional. It was beautiful. The Jewish community were out supporting each other, and I think it's super important. I've said this before, that Gentiles, non-Jews, are there showing them that we support the Jewish community as well, because if there's racism against them, it's against all of us. We should all be supporting them. They sang in Hebrew, and the key difference for me on this march is that the chief rabbi did this wonderful speech condemning anti-Semitism, but also condemning racism, condemning Islamophobia. He was saying to people, we shouldn't be attacking Muslims, we shouldn't be attacking anyone, we should all be getting along. That is what I found missing on the peaceful protest marches.
I think, I mean, I've had to go on second-hand coverage and reports of the marches, because unlike JJ, I wasn't on them. But from what I can gather, just as you were saying, the pro-Gaza and pro-Palestinian marches were much more angry. And of course, we all understand why there is anger about the bombing that has happened in Gaza. But this protest was much sadder and much more fearful. And you can totally understand why the Jewish community, we know, from speaking to so many friends and colleagues in the Jewish community, how frightened and how sad and how fearful they are, and how upset the Jewish community has been that they don't feel that they've been embraced by the wider community, that they don't feel that the rest of us, and I talk as a non-Jew, have put our arms around the Jewish community and have said, we are there with you. So I do think this was a very, very important and significant moment. The only thing that has concerned me is that people tend to think if you were on this march, you're a big fan of Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government. And of course, that's not the case. But again, when people on the other side, and I use that in a very, very broad term, say, yes, but they've got Israeli flags. And you have to explain to people, again, that doesn't mean...
But this is what's so important about all of this, is the conflation of so many different things together, which is you can support the concept of Israel, but you don't necessarily have to support everything they do. You might support everything that you do, or you might support nothing that they do. However, this was more, and I think the reason for the solemnity is that if you speak to anybody within the Jewish community, of which I'm part, you will find a level of concern and worry that I can only remember my grandparents talking about.
Yes.
And my parents reported it from my grandparents. It's not something that I have had to experience in my lifetime. In reality, you've seen it a little bit, but you haven't really had to experience it very much. And you've seen it at the marches. You've seen a few people at work who will make some, anti-Semitic or racist comments. You've seen it within the Labour Party, but it's political and da-da-da. But what you now see is a real rise in anti-Semitic attacks, and a very interesting poll of Jewish people which indicated that nearly 50% of them are looking and thinking, where else could I live if I can no longer live in Britain?
Yes.
And that is the first time that I think many people have questioned this in terms of where's a safe place to live, and they shouldn't have, we shouldn't have to, go through that thought process of having integrated within British society. And I think that point about, Jewish people don't hate other people and other religions. They're quite happy just, you know, you do your thing, we'll do ours, let us get on with it. I think part of the problem is that there are other religions who seem to think that there is only one route and that everybody is either against them or can't possibly be, you know, in support of them. Whereas I would take the view, you know, you either choose or you're born with your religion, your race, your culture. You know, we should respect all of them.
Absolutely. And as I said, there were so many people, so many Jewish people thanking us non-Jews at the march, thanking us for coming down. And actually, let's look at this clip, Vanessa asking Boris Johnson why he was there.
Anti-Semitism, sadly, is a virus that remains beneath the floorboards, always waiting to come out, to be potentiated, to come to life again. And since October the 7th, sadly, tragically, it has come to life. And we've seen it on our streets. And I think what the last few weeks have really shown is, you know, whatever its faults, it is vitally important that Israel should exist.
I mean, I think obviously it's quite heartwarming to see this level of solidarity with Britain's Jewish community, but I am quite sceptical about what this will actually do in terms of having tangible effects on society. I mean, we saw there was a talkTV exclusive earlier this week of, you know, well, last week, of these preachers in mosques around London and around the country, you know, shouting obviously hateful anti-Semitic things. And I just think, actually, this is much bigger than just showing solidarity with the community. How do we deal with people that are living amongst us that are fundamentally incompatible with British values? You shouldn't have to say, you know, don't shout, you know, death to Jews on the streets of our capital, right?
Yes, it should be a given.
Exactly. But the fact that you have to have 100,000 people gather in the streets of London to actually reiterate this point, for me, that concerns me, because yes, you have these people showing solidarity, but there are people in this country that fundamentally believe what they believe, which is hateful, which doesn't, you know, is not
But is
with our
that the
values.
only form of hate? And isn't that part of the problem? That you've
But
got
this is the
plenty of
most
people
blatant I've
who
seen
will
in a
make
while.
racist commentary, who will make homophobic commentary. We have a whole range of people who seem
But
to
James,
think that
do you think someone will stand in the streets of London and say death to black people?
Yeah, they will.
Yes.
And that's why marches like this are so important, that you have to show that solidarity. You have to show that community. I mean, you have 100,000 people turn out, and the Jewish community is small. It's 250,000, you know, people in it. So to have 100,000, you know, almost half the value of that community turn out in solidarity, in support, I think is very powerful and very important. And I do think, Esther, that yes, actually these marches, obviously you're not going to change everybody's idea about everything, whether that's an anti-Semitism march, or whether that's a pro-Palestinian march, but it's all about community. Like you said so rightly, James, you can support Jewish people and the right to exist without supporting Benjamin Netanyahu completely and everything that he says. And you can also support Palestinians and their right to exist without supporting Hamas. But coming together, marching, community is so very important.
You're absolutely right. And just before we move on, I think one of the things that people forget is that there is only one Jewish nation, one country, Jewish country in the world. You know, as a Christian, there are hundreds of Christian countries, there are hundreds of, you know, although there are multiple Muslim countries, there is only one Jewish nation. And so you can understand why people were waving Israeli flags.
And the Jewish people are very well aware that other people have claimed it over the years, and that it is extremely sort of fought over and fraught over. And of course, any conclusion that people came to as to what to do after the Second World War, after 6 million Jews gassed and killed and exterminated, is going to be contentious, because you're going to have to rewrite the rule book. But if you're going to continually look back in history and make those claims, it's nonsensical, because we're also dealing with most of the people who are making those claims weren't alive at that time.